In the deepest caverns beneath the misty mountains, where light has never touched stone and silence reigns eternal, a wretched creature crouches in the darkness. His pale fingers, worn thin by centuries of torment, caress a golden circle that gleams with its own malevolent fire. This is Smeagol, called Gollum, and in his hands rests the fate of all Middle-earth, though he knows it not. For 500 years he has treasured his precious, whispering to it in the black depths, loving and hating it with equal fervor. But what if, in one moment of clarity or madness, he had chosen differently? What if the Ring of Power had met its end, not in the fires of Mount Doom, but in the lonely darkness where it was hidden for so long? This is a tale that Tolkien never wrote, yet it haunts the shadows of his legendarium like a ghost of possibility. In the great weaving of Ilúvatar's music, every note matters, every silence holds meaning. But what if one crucial thread had been cut centuries before its time? What if the ring that would shape the destiny of the Third Age had perished in obscurity, taking with it not just the Dark Lord's power, but the very foundations of the world we know? The question whispers through the halls of memory, like wind through abandoned ruins. Would Middle-earth have been saved, or utterly lost? To understand the weight of this possibility, we must first trace the thread that Tolkien wove through the darkness of ages. The ring came to Gollum through murder, most foul, when the wretched creature that had been Smeagol strangled his friend Déagol beside the Gladden fields. For centuries, it remained hidden, growing in power, calling to its master across the vast distances. Sauron, the necromancer of Dol Guldur, sent forth his will like a searching wind, but the ring lay buried deeper than the roots of mountains, clutched in hands that would not release it and in death. Then came that fateful day when Bilbo Baggins, lost in goblin tunnels, stumbled upon both ring and keeper. The meeting seemed chance, but Tolkien himself wrote in his letters that in his world there is no such thing as mere accident. As he penned to his friend Christopher Bretherton, the ring was trying to get back to its master, and perhaps it was Providence itself that guided the hobbit's hand to find what had been lost. From that moment, the die was cast. Bilbo's finding led to Gandalf's suspicion, which led to Frodo's quest, which led finally to Mount Doom and the ring's destruction in fire and the bitter tears of Gollum's final fall. But Tolkien also wrote of the long defeat, that slow, inexorable diminishing of light in the world that could only be stemmed, never stopped. In his conception, timing was everything. The ring had to endure until the moment was right, until the free peoples were ready to face the darkness, until the age of men could truly begin. Without this careful orchestration, without this measured dance between shadow and light, what might have emerged from the chaos? But let us imagine now that the thread was cut, that in some moment of torment or clarity, Gollum chose destruction over possession. Picture him, driven to madness by the ring's whispers, hurling his precious into the dark waters of the underground lake where no fire burns. Or perhaps, in a fit of rage at its betrayals, he might have struck it against the ancient stones until it cracked and its power bled away into darkness. The ring, tied so intimately to Sauron's essence, would drag its master down with it into diminishment and defeat. The immediate consequences would ripple outward like waves from a stone cast into still water. In Dol Guldur, the shadow that had grown for centuries would suddenly falter and fade. Sauron, deprived of his anchor in the world, would find his spirit scattered like mist before the dawn. His armies, bereft of their commanding will, would turn upon each other or flee to the dark corners of the world. The Nazgûl, bound to the ring through the Nine, would find their forms dissolving, their long torment finally ended as they passed beyond the circles of the world. But this liberation would come to a Middle-earth unprepared for such sudden freedom. Gondor, already weakened by centuries of warfare and the coming of the plague, might indeed grow strong again with Mordor's threat removed. The beacon fires would no longer need to burn. The guards upon the borders could return to their homes. Yet strength built in opposition to a common enemy often fractures when that enemy falls. Without Sauron's shadow to unite them, would the realms of men hold together? Or would they splinter into petty kingdoms, each grasping for dominion over their neighbors? Consider too the Astari, those Maiar sent from Valinor to guide the free peoples against the darkness. Gandalf the Grey, his mission suddenly fulfilled centuries before its time, would find himself adrift in a world no longer needing his guidance. Might he depart immediately for the undying lands, taking with him wisdom that Middle-earth still required? And Saruman the White, here lies perhaps the greatest danger. With Sauron gone and Gandalf departed, who would check the pride of Curunir? His lust for order and control would find new outlets, and without a greater evil to restrain him, his own corruption might spread like a plague across the lands. The elves, already diminishing, might hasten their departure from Middle-earth. Whither would the great struggle that would bind the three rings to the fate of the One, Vilya, Narya, and Nenya, would lose much of their power to preserve and protect. Rivendell and Lothlorien, those last homely houses of the elder days, would fade more quickly into legend and memory. The grey havens would see ship after ship sailing into the west, carrying with them the accumulated wisdom of ages, leaving behind a world darker for their absence. And what of the heroes whose very names have become legend? Without the ring's discovery, Bilbo Baggins remains a respectable hobbit who never ventures beyond his garden gate. The Shire continues in its peaceful isolation, untouched by the wider world's troubles, but also contributing nothing to the great tales that shape the age. Frodo never inherits the burden that would make him a ring-bearer. He lives and dies in quiet obscurity, never knowing the depths of courage that lay within his gentle heart. Aragorn, son of Arathorn, wanders still as a ranger in the wild, his true heritage perhaps never revealed. Without the War of the Ring to prove his worth, without the need for all the free peoples to unite under a single banner, he remains Strider, respected among his kind, but never king of Gondor and Arnor. The sword of Elendil stays broken, the white tree never blooms again in the court of the fountain. The age of men dawns not with the coronation of a king, but with a whimper, as the old powers fade and no new light rises to replace them. The fellowship is never formed. Those bonds of friendship that transcended race and station, never forged in the crucible of shared peril. Gimli and Legolas never discover that dwarf and elf can be brothers. Their peoples continue their ancient grudges unchallenged. Boromir dies defending Osgiliath or some other forgotten border, his nobility unmarked by history, his redemption never achieved through say, Criffis for those he came to love. Merry and Pippin remain the Shire's most notorious young rascals, never growing into the knights and leaders they were destined to become. Most poignantly of all, Samwise Gamgee tends his garden in Hobbiton, never knowing that within his stout heart lay the strength to carry hope into the very darkness of Mordor. His simple loyalty, his unwavering love, his quiet courage, these qualities that would move even the stones to tears, remain unsung, untested, unproven. The world is poorer for never witnessing the gardener's greatest harvest, the salvation of all he held dear. But perhaps the most chilling consequence of the ring's early destruction lies in the fate of Sauron himself. Tolkien was clear in his letters and writings that the Dark Lord's essence was bound inextricably to his ring. When it was destroyed in the fires of Mount Doom, Sauron was diminished beyond recovery, reduced to a powerless spirit doomed to watch helplessly as his dominion crumbled. Yet this diminishment, coming as it did after ages of preparation and the full flowering of his malice, was final and complete. If the ring had perished centuries earlier, in the depths beneath the mountains, Sauron's fall would have been swifter, but perhaps not as absolute. Weakened, but not wholly destroyed, his spirit might have sought other anchors in the world. The 7 Palantiri, still scattered across Middle-earth, could have become focuses for his will. The remaining rings of power, though lesser, might have served as stepping stones back to influence. Like a flame that gutters but does not die, his malice could have smoldered in hidden places, growing slowly stronger as the ages passed and the vigilance of his enemies relaxed. More troubling still is the possibility that other evils would rise to fill the void left by Sauron's premature fall. The mouth of Sauron, that fell lieutenant, whose very name was forgotten in his service to darkness, might have claimed dominion over Mordor's remnants. The Witch King, first and mightiest of the Nazgûl, could have survived the ring's destruction long enough to carve out his own realm of shadow. Saruman, unchecked by any greater power, might have become the very evil he was sent to oppose, turning Isengard into a new center of malevolence that could prove even more dangerous than Sauron himself, for it would wear the mask of wisdom and good intention. The Easterlings and the Haradrim, those peoples who served the shadow, not out of love but from fear or ancient grudge, would not simply lay down their arms and embrace peace. Without a central power to direct their movements, they might fragment into countless warlike tribes, each seeking to claim what territory they could in the chaos that followed Sauron's fall. The lands that in our timeline knew peace under Aragorn's wise rule might instead become a patchwork of petty wars and shifting alliances, with blood and sorrow marking every border. Yet in contemplating these darker possibilities, we must remember that Tolkien himself believed deeply in the role of providence in his world. As he wrote to his son Christopher, "There are satanic symbols in the tale, and Sauron is one, but there are also divine symbols." The professor saw his story not as mere fantasy, but as a reflection of deeper truths about the nature of good and evil, free will and destiny, the role of small choices in shaping great events. In this light, perhaps it was necessary, ordained even, that the ring survive until the proper moment for its destruction. The music of the Ainur, that great theme sung at the beginning of time, might have required every note to sound in its proper place. Gollum's centuries of torment, Bilbo's moment of mercy, Frodo's burden and Sam's loyalty, even Sauron's final defeat, all of these might have been movements in a symphony that could not be altered without destroying the harmony of the whole. Consider the strange mercy that stayed Bilbo's hand in the goblin tunnels, the pity that Tolkien himself called the most important moment in the whole tale. If Gollum had destroyed the ring in his cave, that moment of mercy would never have occurred. The lesson it taught, that even the most wretched of creatures might serve some purpose in the great design, would have been lost. The professor, who lived through 2 world wars and saw humanity's capacity for both cruelty and unexpected grace, understood that some truths can only be learned through suffering. Some lights can only shine in the deepest darkness. Without the long struggle that the ring's survival necessitated, Middle-earth might have been saved from immediate peril, but at the cost of its greatest treasures. The tales of heroism that would inspire generations, the friendships that transcended ancient hatreds, the proof that even the smallest person can change the course of history, all of these would have been stillborn, never given the chance to bloom in the harsh soil of necessity. An easy victory, Tolkien might have said, is no victory at all. It was not enough for evil to be defeated. It had to be defeated by the right people, in the right way, at the right time, so that the victory would mean something beyond mere military triumph. The ring had to survive until Frodo could carry it, until Sam could support him, until Gollum could play his unknowing part in its destruction. The darkness had to grow deep enough that the light, when it finally came, would seem all the more precious for the contrast. Imagine then this alternative Middle-earth, a world where the shadow fell early, where the great tales were never told, where heroes lived and died unknown, It would be a sadder place, perhaps, though its people might not know why. Songs would be sung of smaller things, stories told of lesser deeds. The age of men would begin not with the return of the king, but with a gradual fading, like twilight that comes so slowly one hardly notices the day is done. The Shire would remain safe, but it would also remain small, its people never learning that their quiet courage could shake the foundations of the world. Gondor would endure, but without the renewal that comes from great trial, greatly overcome. The elves would depart, taking with them not just their wisdom, but the memory of what might have been achieved if only the moment had been right for greatness to emerge from the most unlikely places. There would be peace, yes, but it would be the peace of settling rather than the peace of victory earned. Like a garden that grows wild because no gardener tends it, this Middle-earth might flourish in its own way, but it would never know the ordered beauty that comes from love and labor working together against adversity. The very words that Tolkien himself held most dear, courage, loyalty, sacrifice, hope, would carry less weight in a world that had never truly tested them. As we stand now at the end of this imagined tale, looking back across the centuries that might have been, we see at last the wisdom in what was. The ring endured not because fate was cruel, but because the story required its full measure of darkness before the dawn. Every year of Gollum's torment, every league of Frodo's journey, every tear shed by those who loved them, all of it was necessary. All of it was part of a greater design that we can glimpse only in looking back. For in the end, it was not strength that saved Middle-earth, nor wisdom, nor even magic. It was mercy. Bilbo's mercy to Gollum, Frodo's mercy to Smeagol, even Ilúvatar's mercy in allowing the small and the overlooked to play the crucial part when the moment came. The ring could not have been destroyed earlier, because the mercy that would destroy it had not yet been learned, not yet been tested, not yet been proven true. And so the golden circle fell at last into the fires where it was made, taking with it not just the power of the Dark Lord, but the proof that even the longest defeat can turn to victory when the smallest hands carry the greatest hope. In the music of creation, every note must sound in its proper time, and the final chord, when it comes, is all the sweeter for the discord that preceded it. The ring endured until its moment came, and in that moment, all the suffering that had gone before was transformed into something beautiful, something lasting, something that would echo through all the ages of the world. This is why Gollum could never have destroyed the ring in his cave, why the story had to unfold as it did, why even in our imagining we find ourselves grateful that mercy waited for its proper hour. For some victories are too precious to come easily, and some songs too beautiful to be sung before their time. Dear listener, this story ends, but many await. Subscribe so no tale escapes you.